Hi, friends. Welcome back to Extraordinary Connections. My name is Dillon Burns. I'm the pastor at Manchester United Methodist Church, and I'd like to begin today with a retraction from my devotional last week. Last week, I began a theme that I called Giving Tuesday. And in leading into it, I talked about the Tuesday following Thanksgiving when various organizations invite folks to contribute to the good work that they do. And then I said, but of course, this Tuesday is not the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And then I hit publish, and this devotional went live out into the world. And it was pointed out to me that apparently I had forgotten about Canada. As you know, happens because prior to that Tuesday, in the week before, Canadians celebrated Thanksgiving. And so I would like to apologize to the country and great people of Canada for forgetting that you existed and celebrate Thanksgiving at a bizarre time in the year. I hope you will forgive me. And I would like to continue with this theme about giving today. For giving, living a life of generosity, is a foundational part of living a life of faith. For our scripture, we're going to be looking today at the Gospel of Luke, chapter 14. I'm going to read to you verses 25 through 33. This is what Jesus says in the Gospel of Luke. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus. Turning to them, he said, "Whoever comes to me and doesn't hate father and mother, spouse and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even one's own life, cannot be my disciple. Whoever doesn't carry their own cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. If one of you wanted to build a tower, wouldn't you first sit down and calculate the cost to determine whether you have enough money to complete it? Otherwise, when you have laid the foundation but couldn't finish the tower, all who see it will begin to belittle you. They will say, 'Here's the person who began construction and couldn't complete it.' Or, what king would go to war against another king without first sitting down to consider whether his 10,000 soldiers could go up against the 20,000 coming against him? And if he didn't think he could win, he would send a representative to discuss terms of peace while his enemy was still a long way off. In the same way, none of you who are unwilling to give up all of your possessions can be my disciple." Now, this is a challenging passage from Luke, particularly there at the beginning. Jesus talks about hating members of our own family. And of course, we might note that God is love, and so God does not encourage us to hate one another. That's not quite the definition of hate that Jesus is going for here. Jesus is speaking a bit in hyperbole, but about foundational things, which is to say we cannot place even the members of our own family above the person of God when it comes to discipleship. This practice of taking up our cross involves offering all of what we have, including the lives of those we love and our very own life, to God. And that's what those stories that follow are about, these examples about building a tower and going to war. Jesus is saying, look, if you want to follow me, I'm glad and I hope you do, but it takes some preparation to do it. To live a life of discipleship is not something we fall into, but something that takes some effort on the front end and something that we should consider. And so Jesus invites all those who seek to follow him, as we do, to do the work of preparation. And as the text, this passage ends, when Jesus says, "None of you who are unwilling to give up all of your possessions can be my disciple," might be a reminder that one important part of that preparation and of that planning is to look at our financial resources, to plan how we might use those and how we might offer up those to the work of God. And so what I'd like to do today is invite us into the spiritual practice of budgeting. As I mentioned last week, churches very often focus on encouraging us to give, providing the scriptural and faithful reasons to give. But sometimes we come up short in explaining how we go about ordering our lives so that we might give. And so I'd like to take a few minutes talking about that today. Now, you might have a practice of budgeting already, might be comfortable and competent in this area. And if that's the case, I invite you to simply stop this devotional at this point, to go on and reflect on this passage on Luke and how you might use your budget to live a life of discipleship. But if this is something new for you, then let's stick around and go into this. And I would like to introduce you to the thing that saved my life more completely than anything other than the person of Jesus Christ. And that is the budgeting software that I use. Friends, I'd like to introduce you to You Need a Budget. You Need a Budget is an online software that helps guide us through budgeting. It costs a little bit of money, but I think it is well worth it. It's also a good example for any type of budgeting. It's convenient for me to show on this video as it's all electronic and on my computer already, but you can do this with paper and pencil as well. Now, one of the most incredible parts about You Need a Budget is their 4 budgeting principles. They've taken budgeting and they've essentially distilled it down to 4 different rules that I think are consistent with the Christian practice of budgeting and incredibly valuable in getting a handle on our financial lives. The first of those is to give every dollar a job, which is to say, out of the money that you have at any given moment, you should allocate that money to the things that it should be allocated for. Because when we don't, we very often treat the next thing that we need to pay for as the most important thing, when in fact it may not be. Now, there are other practices, and particularly you may have seen or heard of some who take all of the cash that they have at any given moment and place it in envelopes for various things. That's the offline method of doing exactly this, by allocating your money to what you need it to be used for. And so in this budget, I have created an example where this fictitious person has $2,500 at this moment. Now, that's a pretty good amount of money, and it seems like a lot when it comes to buying things, but it may be less than we realize if we give every dollar a job. And so here underneath that, there's a number of different categories in the budget where this money could go to. And we might take those dollars and start giving them jobs, which is to say that perhaps your rent or your mortgage is going to cost you $500 over the next month. And so we'll put $500 there. You can see the way that this software works is I placed it budgeted here. It pulled it from the to be budgeted place at the top and tells you now over on the right-hand side that you have $500 available to spend for your rent. As you go through your daily living with this budget, you would insert in all of the expenses that you pay. They'll show up in the activity and take it out of the money that you've placed for that. So $500 for rent seems fair. For utilities, you might have, say, $100 for water, gas, electric, things like that. Groceries, because we need to eat, we'll place $300 there. You might be feeding more than just yourself. You can see we already budgeted $900 in what is suggested as being called immediate obligations. You need some things just to live. These are things we need to live. And then as we continue down, you can see there are some debt payments. Part of budgeting is in paying off your debt so that you have the financial freedom to use your finances for the things that you value. See, budgeting works for anyone because it matches the values that you have. If one of our values is generosity, is giving back to God through the ministries that we are a part of, well, then that will show up in our budgeting. And one way to be generous is to get ourselves out of debt so we have the freedom to be generous. And so there are 2 frequent debt payments. One is student loans. We might say we're paying $300 a month on a student loan, and the same for a car loan. Then there are some things that we'd like to put money towards for quality of life. See, part of budgeting is making sure that we can live a life at all. Living a generous life doesn't mean that we shouldn't do anything. We should hole ourselves up and never spend any money. It's about living the life we would like to live. And vacation, well, that's a part of that. And we'll start saving up for that by putting $200 in there. Being healthy is important. We'll put $150 in there to pay a gym membership, something like that. Education is valuable. Maybe it's continuing education or saving to go back to school. Put $150 there. And then things that are just for fun. Well, this month we might like to go out to eat some. We'll put $150 there. Subscriptions might cover something like Netflix or any other streaming service. Some fun money. You might like to do some things that get you out of the house, engaging with friends or family. We'll put some money there. You see, we're doing pretty good. We have $275 left here. But you'll see that there is one of these budgets that I have not yet opened. There's a little arrow on the side about that one. And that has to do with rule number 2. Rule number 1 is give every dollar a job. Rule number 2 is embrace your true expenses. There may be some things that we're not going to spend money on this month, and you'll see this budget is for October of 2020, but we will be spending money on, and in that future month, we might not be able to wait and pull from the new money that we've earned. We need to put some money away for it ahead of time. That's things like car repairs, like home repairs, like paying medical bills, like buying clothes, maybe even when they're on sale. You take some money when that happens, like buying gifts for folks, about giving to the church, replacing the computer when that breaks, paying for software, and then all those other things we forgot to budget for. And you'll see at this point, we've come up to negative $200. We have budgeted more money than we have. One of the challenges with a budget, and one of the valuable things about a budget, is it pushes us to actually consider what we can do with the money that we have. And if we'd like to do more, then we might have to pull ourselves back a bit. Rule number 3 is to roll with the punches. If at any point you're trying to do more than what you have, if something costs more money than you planned for, then you have to start reevaluating and moving money around. Now, You Need a Budget is one of my favorites for exactly that. It allows you to make changes to your budget at any time. Because it's a software and not paper and pencil, you can do so without scratching things out and making things very complicated. So we can see we have $200 we need to find money for. And so we might say, well, we're going to put less in vacation this month. So 100 instead of 200. That saved us some money. We'll find a cheaper gym, or maybe not get that membership right away. And we might spend less money eating out this month. And there we go. We brought it back into a $0 budget. And so we've taken the money we have and we've given it all jobs for the things that we anticipate needing this month or needing to save for starting this month, so we'll have it when that expense comes around. Now that's 3 of the 4 rules. The 4th rule is age your money, which is to say that one of the goals of budgeting is to ensure that you are not living from paycheck to paycheck, because that puts us in a tenuous financial position where if something happens that we don't expect and didn't plan for, it leaves us in a really critical spot. And so one of the things that we want to do is to have some money left over to put in an emergency fund or something similar so that we are covered in the instance that something unexpected happens, so that we have built up this fund and in fact are not pulling from the most recent paycheck we've received to buy more things, but have 2 or 3 or 4 paychecks between the money that we are spending and the money that we've earned. So we've built up a bit of a financial foundation, which gives us the freedom to live our financial lives according to the priorities that we hold, which again, as a Christian person, as a people of faith, will be a particular set of values where we value living our lives in ways that give to the things that God would have us give to. Now, that was an awfully quick introduction to budgeting as a whole, to one particular budgeting software. I hope it's helpful for you. It's one that I've used, and I've said this already, basically saved my life more than anything with the exception of Jesus Christ, because it's given me that financial freedom. It's something that has been valuable in times when I've had much smaller incomes than I have at this moment, and I think will be valuable even at various levels of income. And so I encourage you to check that out or to look at other budgeting options if you don't have a budget at this moment. YouNeedABudget.com is how you get to this one. There are a number of blog posts there explaining more. I'd be happy to be a resource for you just as a person who has a budget and has found it to be a useful spiritual practice. And I hope that in this way and in so many other ways, you will join me in doing the work that Jesus invites all of us to do, which is to plan for living the life that God has called us to live. For without that planning, we probably won't just fall into it. So friends, may we be a people of planning and a people of generosity. Go now in peace.